all I have to say about that. So we're going to get started with the presentations. Lexi Brewer, if you want to come up here. This is our first summer scholar for these presentations. She has one more year at Drury University coming up, where she is majoring in international political studies and Spanish with minors in biology and environment and sustainability. She's been working down in Bandon this summer at the Wild Rivers Coast Alliance. One of Lexi's goals this summer, we had all the scholars create goals at the beginning, both personal and professional, was to learn how to focus her mind and energy in a peaceful, productive, and healthy manner. And I'm sure the South Coast has definitely been a good place to exercise that. So without further ado.
All right, thank you, Haley. As she said, I'm Lexi Brewer, and this summer I've been working with the Wild Rivers Coast Alliance in Bandon, Oregon. Wild Rivers Coast Alliance is dedicated to sustainable development on the Oregon South Coast, and my research also helped to further this by promoting sustainable tourism. And so my first project that I worked on was creating an executive summary of the Oregon Coast Trail, or the OCT, which runs along Oregon's about 380-mile coastline. While all beaches, as I'm sure you know, are public in Oregon, some of them don't have a walkable coast. And this is due to a variety of reasons, mostly because there are large bays or rivers that you can't cross, or lands that jut out into the sea and there's no coastline. And so in order to make it as accessible as possible, for the first project, I determined the sections of the OCT that took pedestrians off of the beach, so anything that would make it not walkable, since the goal is to have a continuous trail, where the OCT ran along roadways, including Highway 101, and I used the Oregon Parks and Rec Department map for those that you can see there. The less safe areas of the trail, including a lot of bridges without pedestrian walkways, the public land ownership, where I used Google Maps and also county assessor maps, a list of anyone who would be interested in making the trail more accessible, and then also any available lodging, including all of the campgrounds within 3 miles of the coastline. And then I made maps that included the public land ownership and then also the relative distance of those campgrounds as well. So there's an example of that there. This information will be used as the primary assessment of the current OCT that can then be taken up by a variety of stakeholders, anybody that's interested in making the trail more accessible. Since most of the coast is rural, any sort of trail development and then therefore increased usage of the trail will help to drive the economies of the coastal towns. My second project was the Rural Tourism Studio, or the RTS. Basically, RTS is a series of workshops that's put on by Travel Oregon in order to promote tourism in rural Oregon. It's a series of workshops created by a Travel Oregon consultant and then in conjunction with local community members as well from that region. The region I worked with was the Wild Rivers Coast, which stretches from Bandon and then all the way down to Brookings, or almost the California border. And they completed 8 workshops going from October 2013 till January about 2014, where any community member was invited to attend. And so that could be entrepreneurs or restaurant owners, conservationists, farmers, anybody who would be interested in developing tourism in that area. And so for my project, I first read through all of the documents, the meeting minutes, and everything from those workshops and meetings. And then from reading those, I pulled out all of the highlights and the basic information from those meetings. And then I determined the products or the successes of RTS. And so I compiled that all into a Word document. And then that will now be used to guide the RTS steering committee of the Wild Rivers Coast as they move forward by creating a concise summary of where they are now and then the products that have been created in the past so they can know what to do, move forward. And then this will also be given to the new Oregon State University professor of economic development and tourism. And so it'll give them an overview of tourism that's occurred in that region, and that will be helpful to both develop tourism and then also the future program of tourism at Oregon State. For my third project, I updated the orb. And so the orb is sort of the back-end information platform of Travel Oregon's website that can be used by businesses, communities, or individuals. They simply have to create an account, be approved, and they could start uploading their information. The goal is to allow anybody in Oregon to be able to upload information about lodging, deals, events, attractions, or photographs. That information then is shared onto the Travel Oregon family of websites, different mobile apps, and a variety of other sites as well. And so you can see an example of how that works here, with these stakeholders feeding into the orb and then that being passed along through the internet very easily. And so what I did is I updated the data sheet for the Wild Rivers Coast on lodging deals and attractions to make sure that it was accurate, allowing smaller community events to attract both visitors and locals alike. While my research for these projects are not currently being part of a large-scale project, the information compiled and the summaries that I created will serve as a comprehensive starting point or base to allow any groups or stakeholders to take up this information and already have a base to work with. I'm looking forward to any questions that you all may have, as well as seeing how my projects develop. Yes.
Nice talk.
Thanks.
Can you tell us what like the top 1 or 2 successes are for the RTS?
Yeah, absolutely. So a major success, even though it isn't concrete, they've worked with a variety of groups in that region, and so really just reaching out and then getting to know the community, just sort of facilitating communication between the business owners and the farmers and the conservationists, while previously these communities weren't working with each other because they do stretch from Bandon all the way down to Brookings. So it's a huge stretch of the coast. And so the communities were sort of developing their own tourism assets that were then inadvertently competing with each other. And so now they've been able to create a holistic approach to determining the best assets of each region. So that's a huge success. And then out of that, there's also these 3. This is sort of what they've honed in on as they identified the specialties of that region. And so we have agritourism, which is farm trails. And so there's one that stretches, I believe, from Gold Beach and then almost down to Brookings. And so a series of farms that now, whenever they were previously isolated, now there's a concrete trail that you can stretch and then try the different products of each farm. There's also culinary tourism, which feeds into that as well, being able to sell local produce and products at, say, the Bandon Farmers Market. And then also nature recreation. And so they, an example of that is the bike trail, the scenic bikeway that was developed down there close to Bandon as well. So.
Thank you.
Yes?
I'm interested in convincing some friends of mine to walk the Oregon Coast Trail.
Yes.
Does the information here have access to representative photographs from some good sites as well as some of the more difficult access sites?
The information that I compiled?
Yeah.
So currently what I didn't focus on the photographs, but I did mostly focus on how to make the trail more continuous and safe and accessible. But you should tell your friends to look up Bonnie Henderson. She was where I got a lot of my research. She has a book actually that she published a couple years ago. And so she takes pictures of most of her day hikes that are beautiful there. So, yeah. Did you have a question?
So you've got a list of possible stakeholders for the Oregon Coast Trail product.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone who's actually picking this up now and running with it? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure yet. I gave my summary to John Paul Bowles of Travel Oregon, and then also Marie Simons, my host that I've been working with. And so they're sort of right now going through the preliminary stages of seeing what else they need to work with it. But they did give it to ORAD, the Outdoor Recreation Team of Oregon, I guess, and they were pretty excited to see where they could go with it. So there's definitely some possibilities in the works. Great. Thank you.